Welcome to Unbroken the podcast. I'm Savannah Levins. I started this podcast because in my life experience and working as a news reporter, I found everyone's been knocked down or blindsided or had their world seemingly turned upside down at some point. And for many people, it's cathartic to talk about their experiences out loud. And likewise, it can be therapeutic to hear other people's stories and know that there is light at the end of all darkness. If you have a story you'd like to share on the podcast, I'd love to hear from you. Just email unbrokenthepodcast@gmail.com. And please rate, review, and subscribe. On today's episode, we have Erika, who came to the difficult realization that her seemingly perfect life was just not what she wanted. She cut out her safety nets and set out to follow her passion, which definitely was not an easy task. Here's Erika. All right, today we have Erika on the podcast. Erika, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So let's jump right into your story, which we've talked a little bit about. I think it starts with your marriage, and you kind of described it as waking up one day and realizing this is not the life for me. Can you kind of tell me what led you to that revelation?
Yeah, so I got married very young. I got married at 20 to a wonderful, wonderful man. And it was one of those things where, you know, the first 7 years were pleasant and easy and smooth. And then things started not becoming pleasant, easy, or smooth. In fact, they were getting very hard. And so what started happening was, you know, every relationship has its issues. So we fix it. We work on it. And we were doing that for 3 years, going to therapy, talking about our issues, trying to read books, all the things. And then one day, after all this, kind of waking up and realizing, wait, I married the wrong person for me. And realizing I married who I thought I should have married. And this person, because they were kind, because they were smart, because they were all the things that I looked for quality-wise in a person, that this had to be my guy. And so I kind of made a narrative around that. And only 10 years later to find out, oh, no, that's not true. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I was like, I'm living a disingenuous life.
When you came to that realization, was it more enlightening or scary?
I mean, it was both. So it was one of those things where it took me literally another month to say it because it was so terrifying. I had literally planned the rest of my life with this person. And everything, my entire adult life was together with this person because I'd been with him since I was 19. Mm-hmm. And so to literally get up and be like, all the plans, all the life I had planned, were going to be gone. And so that was absolutely terrifying. On the other side, it was this freedom and peace within me that cannot be described. It was just this weight was lifted off my shoulders, and I can't even tell you how relieving that was. So it was this paradox of terror and peace.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Did you have any doubts in your mind, or were you pretty confident that you knew this wasn't right for you and something had to change?
Once I let myself go there, because again, this was a long process. It's not like just one day I randomly woke up and was like, oh, I married the wrong person. But once I had gone through my process on that, once all the layers in the unpeeling of the onion, I call it, had gotten to its core, there was just not a single shred of doubt in my being, not a fiber in my being. And people were like, are you sure? Are you sure? And I was like, literally, I have not been so sure about anything in my life, like that this is the next best thing for both of us.
So that was obviously something really difficult to go through, this divorce. And then at the same time or right after, you had another road bump. Tell me about that.
So 2 weeks after leaving my husband, I'm, finally having that conversation, I was going to work, and the person I was working with sat me down, and this person had some deep revelations herself and decided she wanted to do the business differently than she thought she was going to, and had said, I can't afford to keep you on. I need to let you go. And I was just like, oh my goodness. Not only did I just move to Charlotte a year before, I had just ended my marriage of 10 years. And now the job that I had been working really hard to, get into and solidify was now gone as well. And I just was stunned. I didn't even know what to do. It was terrifying.
Was your instinct in that moment go mode, what's next? Or was it just, I want to curl up in a ball like the world is crashing around me?
I went into, I'm a kind of a go-getter. Mm-hmm. And I I will say this, though. My driver at that moment, though, was fear as opposed to love in my heart. And I was like, get another job. Just get another job. And so I went into panic mode and started feverishly searching for another job and went to networking events. And I did actually end up interviewing for another job and getting it within the next 6 to 8 weeks. That was also in this realm of more holistic medicine, because I was like, I'm going to do something more holistic. I can't go back to the U.S. healthcare system in the way that I had been practicing it as a nurse for, almost a decade prior. So I got this other job, but let me tell you, it was based out of fear and not out of my heart. And, and so I was there for about another month at this new job.
And then what happened after that month? Because the story does not end there.
Oh, no, this does not end at getting laid off once. So I went in to work again, and things seemingly were going well at this new job. And the person who hired me sat me down one day and was like, this was a Thursday. I'll remember it so clearly. He's like, I don't think this is going to work. And I'm like my stomach, just dropped. My mouth was just wide open. I'm like, what do you mean you don't think this is going to work? I've been getting positive feedback. Things seem to be going well. It just was like getting hit by a Mack truck. It completely blindsided me. And I don't think this person was very clear. He just felt this wasn't a good match. And so he's like, yeah, I just questioned some things. And when he was talking about the things he was questioning, I'm like, you clearly don't see me. Mm-hmm. This clearly isn't a good match. This clearly will never work. And so I said, thank you for the opportunity, packed up my things from my, quite new office, yeah. And got laid off again.
Oh my gosh.
And I, typically am a very coveted employee. I work hard, I'm smart, I'm good with clients, I'm good with patients. And I was just like, what is going on? And that's when I crawled up into a ball and with my cats, and it was like, the world is crashing. Yes, the world is crashing.
Now, you described yourself as a go-getter. So in that moment, were you just so confused? It sounds like your second boss in particular couldn't really give you a specific reason. Were you just like, am I really a bad employee? Were you having self-doubt?
This was a very vulnerable time for me, because all my safeguards and safety mechanisms were just falling off left and right. So, my former husband, we were very good friends, and we still are very good friends, actually. Letting go of him, he was this emotional safety net in my life. And letting go of him, I felt so raw and naked. And this was just so new for me. I didn't really have those, developmental stages of really having that time on my own, because I got married so young. It's not right or wrong. It just simply was. And then not having a job to distract me. I've used to being such a busy bee, overachiever, perfectionist. And now I didn't have that to grab onto anymore. And the feelings that I felt, I could tell why I had gotten into the situations that I had gotten into, because they were so overwhelming and so deep. And just like, oh my gosh, this is so uncomfortable to feel. Mm-hmm. And so I did cry it out that day. I just cried myself to sleep, essentially, and was like, I didn't even know what was going to happen the next day.
You described that feeling as feeling raw and stripped down. In that moment where you were just so low and so confused and so lost, were you forced to face the you that you wanted to be in that moment?
In starting to, yes, because what I came to realize is what I had been avoiding for so long was the real me. I was terrified of who I really was and who I really am. Because this person is very different, is very against the grain, is very risk-takey. And I wasn't ready to meet her at 20 years old. I wasn't ready to meet her in my 20s. And so, when this happened, I was 30. Mm-hmm. And ready or not, the universe was like, oh, you're going to meet her now.
Yeah, here it is. It's time.
She is. Yeah. So maybe that was this uncertainty and this feeling of unfamiliar that was just very scary and different.
Mm-hmm. So where did your journey take you then after you kind of picked yourself up, collected yourself, put the cats back on the ground, wiped the tears? What happened next?
So literally the next day, so I told you I got laid off the second time on a Thursday. The next morning was a Friday morning. And, I woke up and I just heard in my head, my body medicine, my body medicine, my body medicine. And the backstory of that is a year and a half before, when I was doing clinicals in California, I was introduced to my body medicine as a modality of integrative healing. And I had never really heard of it. And I was just enthralled, so intrigued by it, because the conventional nurse practitioner I was shadowing, integrated it into her practice. And it's the whole notion of how our spiritual and emotional health influences our physical health. And I thought that was just fascinating, and how it was actually working, and how she used that with clients and patients. So I just kept hearing in my head, it was one of those things where I was like, oh, someday I'll do that. Someday I'll do that. Someday I'll go, look into that. And then I'm like, what is stopping me from looking into it now? I literally have no job. I am single with cats. I have in this new city still, right, where I hardly know anybody. I mean, it was a very what else do I have to lose, right? So I was like, I wonder if the Centers for Mind Body Medicine are putting on any of their beginners trainings. And so I went online. This was Friday. That Monday in California, they were putting on their beginners training for practitioners. And I was like, if there wasn't more of a divine sign. So I called up my former husband and I said, I need to go to this. And he was so supportive and was like, get on a plane and go, just go. And so I, within 48 hours, was in San Francisco at this training.
Wow.
And when I got there, they're like, oh, so what are you doing here? I'm like, well, I got laid off again last week. And I said, the universe just kind of brought me here. I felt like this is where I had to be. And it totally was. It was just this, this is exactly, just how I had no doubt in my mind that I needed to leave my marriage. There was no doubt in my mind that this was my path. And as a healer going forward, I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what it was supposed to be, but I just knew I was on the right path and to just trust it.
So for those who are not familiar with, this subject, what are some of the things that you learned, and how can you describe it to someone who's never even heard of this concept?
Of mind body medicine?
Yes.
Yeah. So, again, this is a little more holistic. To some people, it sounds woo-woo, and that's okay. It's not for everybody to necessarily accept, but it's the whole notion of how, again, our spiritual and emotional health influences our physical health. So I'll tell you an example from my time in California of how this nurse practitioner integrated it. So this man came in and he had neck pain. It was new onset, no injury, no history of it. All his scans came back normal. All of his assessments are normal. And the thing was, during that time too, and I don't know how much time I'll have to talk about this, but I was going through a tremendous amount of health issues myself with autoimmune problems and gut issues that had been in remission after I discovered proper nutrition and getting my exercise on board. I was the perfect patient. And so when it came back 3 years later with a vengeance, I'm like, why is this happening? And so when she was with this guy with neck pain, she's like, those patients where everything's right but something's wrong? And I looking at me, I'm like, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. She's like, well, this guy, when this happens, I always turn to mind body medicine. And I'm like, okay, well, what's that? And so she whipped out this one book. She's as a reference, right? There's many, but it was You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. And she's like, there's this index in the back. And so when you go to neck pain, it says inability to see other people's points of view. And I was like, well, that is just certainly interesting. So when we went back into the room with the guy, she's like, are you open to alternative explanations for things? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, do you have trouble seeing other people's points of view? And I kid you not, his jaw dropped to the floor. He was like, that is my biggest problem. I cannot understand why people think the way they do. I'm always arguing with people. like it's my way or the highway. She's like, wrote on a prescription pad, okay, this is your homework. You need to start like trying to see other people's points of view and come back and see me in 3 months. And I'm like, does this actually work?
Right.
And she's like, much of the time, it really helps when people shift their mindset, shift their emotions, and shift the way they're living their lives. And I'm like, that is insane and amazing all at the same time. So using like the way we're thinking and seeing the world to change our physical health. Yeah.
So that's something that you've seen work and in practice.
Yes. And then for myself, and so when I was going through this, these transitions, when I finally left my marriage, when I finally started doing my inner work during this time, after I left my jobs and started aligning with my authentic self, the autoimmune problems started to go away. The gut issues started to go away. My hair started growing back. I mean, I was to a point where I was losing my hair. And when I started aligning with who I really was and living the life I was meant to live, these things reversed. And I'm like, there is something very important about being who we truly are, living the lives we feel we're meant to live, doing the things we feel we're meant to do when it comes to physical health. And so it started me on that path.
So you go, you do this training, you say, this is my passion, this is my path, no doubt about it. Where do you go from there?
So it was one of those things where I was done shooting from the hip. Because, again, before I was shooting from the hip. I got to get this job. I got to do this. I got to blah, 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 blah. Again, what I call shooting ourselves to death. Like, I should, ... Well, who says, right? It's like, we make up these narratives in our head about how things are supposed to look based on society or what other people tell us or whatnot. And I'm throwing that all out. I'm done with it. And so I know I'm supposed to be on this path, but I still don't know what it looks like. So what am I going to do in the meantime? How am I going to live this life? Now, I could have gone back to fear, which was, I could easily go back to get a nurse practitioner job for 6 figures in the U.S. healthcare system, seeing 40 patients a day in a family practice, prescribing tons of medications that I intuitively feel people don't need. If they just had the time to work with me, we could get to a more sustainable solution. But in the system, it's very hard to do that. It's not necessarily, it's about, production and numbers and things like that. So there's many amazing practitioners in the healthcare system. The system, as we all know, is troubled. And so with that, I'm like, okay, I could do that. I would be miserable. And I knew this. Okay, so instead of just going to what I know I could get, which is all this money with my degrees, whether it be RN or nurse practitioner, or I could be creative. And also I'm like, I'm single, I have all this time. What do I really want to do? I want to travel. Who says you can't be a healthcare worker and travel? So I applied for a job at the airline.
Wow.
Yeah, and it took me a few months, but I finally got a job, and I worked part-time at the Charlotte airport.
Wow.
Yes. Yes.
So at that point in your life, you're looking at, okay, I can be miserable with this big safety net.
Yep.
Or I can cut that out and just figure out the path that I want to take.
Yes. So exactly. And so I got a minimum wage job with the airline at the airport, and I was the happiest, I kid you not, Savannah, the happiest I have been in my entire life. Like, I was initially a gate agent, and then I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm a tomboy, a girly tomboy, and I just want to bring in the planes. And so I'm a ramp agent now. I bring in the planes with the orange glow sticks. I offload the planes. I load the planes. I push the planes back. And I fly for free whenever I want. And it's amazing. I've been going somewhere almost every month, just around the world. It's been amazing. And then on top of that, it's like, okay, well, how do I make enough money to live? And I rent out rooms in my house on Airbnb.
Okay, were the people in your life like, Erika, what are you doing? Or were they supportive?
They were supportive. I think they were all a little scared. I was too. Like, this is like, okay, well, we know what you're doing is totally you. Because, like, they wouldn't expect anything less out of me in a situation like this. And also, it's like watching, like, what's going to happen, because this isn't conventional. This isn't safe. Safety is an illusion anyways, but it's not, there's no safe feeling in it. And we're just like, okay. But I think there was a piece in everybody that was like super like, yes, because they're like, she's doing what's making her happy. And if this can work for her, this can work for anybody.
Do you think that there's a little piece in all of us that wants to be that brave? And do you think that's why maybe people say yes?
Oh, absolutely. And that's the whole purpose of what's come to manifest since. So in this whole time, I really felt called to help people realize just how brave and powerful they are. Mm-hmm. And because everybody has that ability. Like I am not special in the fact of like, she's got these abilities. Like anybody can bring in planes. Anybody can, go get the degree in something. Anybody can rent out their rooms on Airbnb. But do you find it within yourself to say yes to yourself? Do you find it within yourself to say yes to happiness and no to to disingenuity? And so I truly want people to access that. And so I was starting to manifest in my head. This was during the fall of 2017. Okay, well, how do I bring the mind-body medicine in, and how do I help people in this greater scheme? And that was just kept thinking about it while I was working this minimum wage job and hustling, renting rooms on my house on Airbnb, not doing anything related to healthcare during this time, and just letting things marinate.
So then how did you kind of eventually move into doing a little bit more of that mind-body medicine?
So I was looking for places in Charlotte, and I was looking like, oh, where could I practice this? Where could I do this? And then it was this winter of 2017. I finally hit me. I'm like, wait, there is no place in Charlotte that does this. There is nothing that has what I'm looking for, and I have to be the one who's going to do it. Like, it was just like clear as day. Yep. Again, no doubt. Like, you have to create your own practice. And I was like, oh my goodness. So it's, again, brave, right? It was like, not only are you going to get a job, you're going to make it, and you're going to create it, and you're going to do it. And I was like, I guess I am. So then, still, even when I was applying for the LLC license and things like that, I still didn't 100% know what it was going to look like. I just had some ideas. I was like, okay, I think there's going to be a coaching aspect. And I think, again, the mind-body medicine is going to be in there somehow. And then in that spring, in my own healing journey, I came across a thing called theta healing, which is an energy form of healing. People have heard of Reiki and acupuncture, and this is another modality of energy healing. And it just completely changed my health and my life more than anything ever has. And so powerful that I was like, I have to get certified in this. So then I went to Chicago, got certified in it, came back and was like, my practice, this is it. I'm going to be doing mind body medicine, theta healing, and what I call wholeness life coaching, which is helping people find their way into wholeness and happiness through being a whole person, not just like, what you think you should look like, what you actually are.
Mm-hmm. So how did that eventually all come together to where you are and what you're doing today? Yeah.
So again, been traveling, worked for the airline, do the Airbnb, and then I literally just, applied for the business, and I was like, okay, well, this can work remotely, so I don't need an office. And I literally just put a post on Facebook like, hey, like, shop is open. Like, Erika started her own business.
It's so easy these days. I mean, it really is. It can be that simple.
It can be that simple. And I started it in Instagram, and I started like social media, and I literally just started talking about it to whoever would listen to me. Mm-hmm. And which is, again, scary, right? Because people could just like look at you and be like, all right, that's interesting. And, it's not necessarily glamorous, and it's not necessarily, this big thing. Like, you were literally starting a business from the ground up and have 0 clients when you start this thing. And it's kind of like, convincing people, or showing them, I should say, like, this is worth trying.
Right.
And this is so different. Like, who has heard of mind body medicine, right? Who has heard of theta healing? And what is this wholeness coaching even all about? And here I am coming into the world being like, hey, try this, So it just people started trying here and there, spreading by word of mouth. I've not really been advertising, and just letting it grow organically. And so I launched it last summer and continued to work for the airline, continued to do Airbnb with my house. And I have a tiny house, and I do it out of there. And just letting things go, and it's starting to really just turn into this like actual business and actual thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like exactly what I was supposed to do.
Yeah. Is that a very fulfilling feeling for you compared to where you were all those years ago?
Oh my gosh, there is just no better feeling in the world than being aligned with who you are and who you're meant to be. Like, I wake up every day just full of energy, excited to do my work. It's like, it's so good that I could never go back. That's the thing. It's so good I can never go back. And I think anybody who's been through that experience and process, yeah, life looked like it should have, quote unquote, but you were miserable, or you weren't happy, or you were tired, or it didn't fulfill you. And when you're truly aligned with what you're meant to do, even though you might not be making that much money, even though you might be hustling every week like I am, like, there is nothing I'd rather do in the world. It's amazing.
Yeah. And I think because you're in this really great place right now, telling your story, you're energetic, you're happy.
Yeah.
I think some people might listen and think she makes it sound easy. It's not easy to let go of everything. Right?
Oh my gosh, this was not easy at all. So I don't judge I've let go of this like framework and of judgment, like good and bad. Like, what happened to me was bad. It was not bad at all. It was hard though. And I mean, there were days where I was just like, I would sit in my house just paralyzed with anxiety because it was like so overwhelming what was happening to me. I literally didn't know what to do. And I would reach out. I was really good about reaching out to people and trying to I just sort of slowly crawled my way out of this hole. Like, it was like that. I'm like, there's light. I know there's light. If I just keep crawling, there's got to be light. Exactly. And it was painful. And so when people are going through things like this, like, the thing that got me through it was just the trust and the faith. And I kept taking one step at a time. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is to welcome people into your life that support you on this path and what you're doing. Because I started slowly shedding people that were not going to be my cheerleaders in life, and just trying to welcome and bring in more people who are invested in my healing and helping me bring this all together. And that gave me so much support and strength to carry on in it as well.
For those who are listening to you and your stories resonating with them and maybe sparking a little fire in them, thinking, all right, maybe I need to be more honest with myself and my life and my path, what advice would you give to them?
Yeah, listen to that. I'm working, I write a blog and I talk a lot about listening to yourself and listening to your gut, because you're right. And so when you're feeling that offness, that, something's not aligning, and realizing, well, why am I doing it? I just start navigating that path and that journey and listening to it and trusting. Because a lot of people feel, this is the thing I hear most often, is when I think about myself in that way, I feel selfish. And I tell people it's not selfish. It's what I call whole-ish, like WHOLE-ish. It's whole-ish because you're listening to your heart, where, like, being selfish is ego-based. And I say being whole-ish is heart-based. If you're listening to your heart and your gut, trust that. And you matter. And, what people need in this world, and what this world needs, are people being themselves truly. Like, that is really going to help make this world a better place. And so if we stop shooting ourselves, stop thinking what we're supposed to be doing, and what would this world look like if people were actually happy with what they're doing and who they were? I mean, think about it. That's hard to think about.
It is, yeah.
But I'm like, that's the mission I'm on, and the mission I'm trying to get people to wake up to.
Right.
Yeah, but listen to it.
Yeah, that safety net can be so tempting.
So tempting. And even to this day, it's so tempting. Like, at times, it's becoming less and less because I'm practicing the living in that authenticity and trusting the manifesting process and whatnot. But it is tempting. But what I invite people to do is trust to let go.
So you've got personally an exciting trip coming up?
I sure do.
Tell me about that.
Next week, I leave for 20 to 25 days. We'll see how it ends up. But I'm going to Nepal, and I'm climbing to the base camp of Mount Everest.
Wow.
Yes!
That's amazing.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Was that something that's been on your list for a while, or what made you want to do that?
And it's amazing. Again, when you start to open yourself up, this is literally how it came about. How divine is this? About this time last year, I was thinking in my head, because, I can go out wherever I want with this airline job. Like, man, I really want to go see I'm a mountain girl. So I want to go see Mount Everest. Like, I don't want to climb the whole thing, but I do want to see it. And that's just like, sounds so epic to me. It's so amazing. And I'm a hiker and a camper, and like, what? how much more adventurous does it get? So I was thinking this, and a girl that I worked with in Pennsylvania 6 years prior on the trauma unit that I worked at there, I have not talked to her or seen her since then, but we're Facebook friends. You know, you live different places. You keep in touch by just being Facebook friends. And she reached out to me randomly one day. It was like, hey, I know you travel because I see you on Facebook. Would you want to come with me on this trip to Mount Everest? And I was like, girl, yes.
I'm in.
I'm in. Like, did I have the money per se? No, but I just trusted I would have the money. So I'm going to pay for it now, and I'll figure out a way for it to come. And it has. And now here we are a week away. And, you know, I have literally gone from unemployed to not knowing, you know, what the next day was going to bring to climbing to the top of the world.
Wow.
It feels pretty awesome.
Do you think if Erika 10, 15 years ago could look at Erika today, would she believe it?
Oh my gosh. I tell people this all the time. Even if you would have told Erika 2 years ago what would be my life now, I would have laughed and been like, you're crazy. Like, let alone 10 to 15 years ago, I would have been so shocked and terrified. Like, no, what? Like, I wouldn't know what to make of it. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And so it's just amazing to see where it's, after letting go and allowing life to happen, where it's come. Yeah.
If people want to learn more about your practice, how can they do that?
Absolutely. So my practice is called Inner Fire Wellness. And you can check me out at Inner Fire Wellness NC for North Carolina.com. And also on Facebook, Inner Fire Wellness, Erika Shepherd, nurse practitioner. And then Instagram is innerfire_wellness.
Awesome. So what about those people who might be a little bit skeptical about this type of practice, mind-body medicine, but they are interested and maybe want to be open?
Totally. So read my testimonials. And if all you have to be is interested and curious. People are like, well, if I don't necessarily believe it, will it work? I'm like, look, all you have to do is be open enough to show up. And coming from somebody who is a Georgetown graduate, conventionally trained, been in the U.S. healthcare system for almost a decade, and I'm telling you, this has worked better than anything I've ever experienced or seen. Just keep that in mind. Like, just be open. Like, well, why would she go from that to this, right? And starting her own practice. Like, that's literally how amazing this stuff is. And I'm here to just be here for people who are ready for it.
Awesome. Any final words before we say goodbye?
Any final words? Oh, I know I have something. Just be brave. Just be brave and follow your joy. Like, joy is our compass. If you are following joy, you are on the right path. If you are feeling, you know, it doesn't mean you're joyful every second. There are moments of sadness. There are times where there's times to grieve. Like, that's absolutely. But in general, if your baseline, if you're following joy, you are on the right path. So follow that.
I love that. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, and good luck on your trip. I want to see photos.
Yes,
so
absolutely. Thank you, Savannah.
Thanks, Erika, and thank you for listening to Unbroken, the podcast. We'll see you next time.